Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Have We Thought This Through? This one is all about constructing better questions. And I'm just going to split this in half. One part about the construction of the questions, and the other part about how we can arrive at the best possible answers. And it's going to be something of a checklist. I'll draw a diagram over the screen, hopefully, so that we can see what we're doing. But it's a nice and practical thing that I just wanted to explore with you. So the first thing is there's 4 chunky things to consider when we're constructing a question. So the first is the framing. So how do we frame this question? Let's imagine we're in a project or we're in an organisation and we really want to understand something. The first thing to note is, have we come to this question with a set of assumptions already? A good example of whether you might actually have some assumptions that are worth noting is, do you in fact already have a provisional answer to this question? Many a time I've encountered a piece of research or what seems on the surface to be an open-ended question, which turns out to actually be a senior figure's vision for an answer that they're already seeking. Sometimes that can be okay, but it's good to have that out on the table. And here's another sort of aspect of the same thing, which is, should we now work on this question, whatever it might be, are we going to be able to accept any new answer? And what's it going to take to help us accept that new answer? The second thing is around clarity. And obviously this is all about language. Are we holding a question that is clear? Is it written in a kind of language that is understood by the group of people that are going to work on it? A common language? Have we overdone it in that regard, and has it become a kind of a jargon-based language, or the language of a tiny culture of people, and it doesn't transfer easily into a wider understanding? Have we baked some ambiguity into this? A really good way that we've found with this is to test the work that you're doing with a critical friend, perhaps someone that knows a little bit less about the organisation, to see what sense they can make of your question. The next thing to think about is the scale of your question. Are you operating at too grand a scale or too small a scale? So a good example might be around, we'll all have encountered some version of this. How do I use AI in my organisation? How am I going to use it? Well, that's already way too big a question. It's too broad. It's too open-ended. It might be that a better question might be, how might I use AI to support in an educational business? How do I use AI to support students, right? So that I've got really fast information coming through that AI is translating and putting in front of the right support services to engage with them. Or it might be that you go even deeper around that scale. Perhaps it's even lower scale. There's a particular process in my support service that I want to improve with AI. How can that be done? So this question of scale, is something too broad or too narrow, too high up, too low down? Finding that Goldilocks form of that question. Related, but definitely different, is this question of resolution. Can this question be usefully broken up into smaller parts? Might I find that there are 4 different questions lurking inside my one big question? And there's going to be a real benefit if I can find those, because I might be able to give those questions to different people to work on in parallel, because they have quite different domains that they need to work in, quite different sort of specialisms and expertise. But we have to ask ourselves this question: if we do break it up into smaller units, is there a way that we can bring them back together to form a coherent or holistic view of my question? So those are 4 things that it's useful to consider when we're constructing our questions. 4 things that we might want to consider when we're thinking about the answers. First one, straight out of the bag, is going to be, do we have a sense of who is best placed to answer this question? Who are the teams? Who are the people? Do they have a sense of permission that they can get on and answer this question? Are their roles designed in such a way that they feel that they could address this question? Do you have a role to play in empowering individuals and teams to be able to answer this question? There's an interesting twist on the who, which is, if someone else is going to answer that question, what should I be doing in the meantime? If it's my question and another team is now working on it, should I be intervening, checking in? Should they be giving me updates? Do I just wait at the end to hear the answer? That's an important thing to get out on the table. So that brings us obviously into the how. Do you already have a sense of how you want this question to be answered? And if you have that sense of the right way, how open are you for others to suggest their way? And can that be part of that question set? Can you say, here's my question, and I actually also want you to tell me how best this question can be answered? Okay, so let's get on to the third thing. What format and form should the answer take? So, it's clear that sometimes a question looks like what it needs is a written report. But actually, it might not. It might need a diagrammatic response, or it might need a series of vox pop videos, or it might need a beautiful comic strip that brings the answer ideas to life in a completely different way. And it might need all of those things, because it might not only be you that needs to understand the answer, but a whole bunch of other people. And not only do they need to hear and understand and connect with the answer, they want to find it compelling, interesting, and useful. And of course, the formats for an answer are going to have an incredible influence on that. So the fourth thing is about information. So does your question look like it's going to require the creation of new information, or indeed the gathering of existing information? And it's likely to be both, but what might be the balance between those things? So it's good to think about that in advance, and to think about what some of that information might be. So for example, we might look to expert positions. Not that the expert's faring very well in the modern discourse. There might be user and customer perspectives that we might want to gather. There might be sector insights that we want to draw on to understand this problem, this question in context. We might want to do some prototyping and generate insights from that as part of our answer. One that I really like, but is sometimes forgotten, is the idea of historical perspectives. Have we tried to answer this question before? Has society, other organisations tried to answer this question before? What does history have to tell us about how to answer this question? Obviously a very delicious thing might be, is there a role here for speculative futures? It's not so that we're finding a kind of crisp, clean, this is the answer to my question, but actually a set of open-ended provocations and possibilities in response to our question, in the form of speculative futures. And of course, these days we might want to think about all the different ways in which we might want to bring data into that, but we must ask ourselves, how might it tell its story? And if we need new data, where's that coming from? And if it's from our own systems, have we got the sensors and the insights systems in place to be able to make use of that data? So I just wanted to use that as a bit of a checklist for any particular kind of challenging question that you're working on. How can you construct the best version of that question, and then how can you start to anticipate the ways in which the best answers might be arrived at? Thanks very much, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Bye.